Welcome to Authorities Brittle, the Andor panel. We've just been calling it the Andor panel. So I'm super excited to be your moderator today. I'm Mia Tai, author of Bitter Medicine, and I am joined by my three esteemed panelists who will all go and introduce themselves. Suzanne, why don't we start with you?
All right. My name is Suzanne Walker. Pronouns are she or they. I am based in Chicago, Illinois. I am a writer and editor. I'm the co-creator of the graphic novel Mooncakes. I have a few short stories published, and I have an upcoming short story that is going to be published in the 40th anniversary anthology celebrating Return of the Jedi, which I'm very excited about. And I think that's it I think those are the most pertinent things to know about me.
All right, go ahead and popcorn it over to one of our other panelists.
Victor.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Victor Manibo. Pronouns are he, him. For a visual aid, I am a Filipino man with black hair and facial hair. There's a couch behind me and some plants. I am a Filipino science fiction and fantasy writer based in Queens, New York. I wrote The Sleepless, which is right here. It's my debut novel. Science fiction noir came out last August from Erewhon Books. I am also coming out with a new science fiction thriller in spring 2024 from Erewhon, and this is the first time I'm announcing this in public. It's called Escape Velocity, so watch out for that in I guess 8 or 9 months.
Amazing. Hi, sorry to just jump into that. I love The Sleepless, so I'm very excited about this.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emma Mieko Candon, she, they. I am in Honolulu, Hawaii. I've also written a short story for that Star Wars anthology that Suze wrote for. And there's a lot I'm excited to say about it that I can't say yet. But my first Star Wars project was actually Star Wars Ronin, which is a novel that was extrapolated from one of the shorts of Star Wars Visions, which were like 9 anime shorts iterating on Star Wars mythology from Japanese studios. The second season, which is like more international, so not just Japan, is coming out in a few weeks. I'm super stoked about that. Ronin was Star Wars through the lens of Japanese history and mythology, and my original debut is coming out in a couple months, The Archive Undying, which is more anime bullshit. Giant, beautiful mechs, lots of trauma and queers, and
We love it. We love it.
It's really
good.
Too.
It's really good.
I'm reading already. I'm jealous.
And just like that cover is so amazing also.
Breathtaking. The artist did
So
such
I'm
an
going to take care of some
job.
quick housekeeping things, y'all. We have a lot of questions, a lot of material to get through, and I'm sure the audience will have questions for us. I'm going to reserve about 10 minutes at the end for audience questions. For accessibility, if you look at the bottom left of your screen, there is a little speech bubble with the letter CC in there. You can always hit that for closed captions, which are actually, they're being auto-generated. They're actually really good. And if you don't like having them block the bottom of your screen, you can actually shuffle them off into the chat pane. Can't remember how to do that, but I know it's possible because I've done it. All right, and we are unfortunately missing Rebecca Roanhorse today. She is ill and cannot be with us, but we very much miss her. And of course, at the end, we will shout her out and her books. As she is also a Star Wars IP writer, in addition to being an multiple award-winning bestseller. Okay, so we're diving straight in. Our first question. How have the showrunners shown colonialism and indigeneity in Andor that makes it markedly different to other Star Wars films and shows? How central are these depictions to Andor, and what examples have stood out to you?
I mean, I think the most striking thing, like way up in the first episode, is that like Cassian is himself a racialized human, which, in Star Wars, they tend to try and, I guess, sand away all of marginalized pressures. Like it doesn't matter if someone is not white, it doesn't matter if someone, whatever gender or sexuality they are, technically, because obviously it does matter to the creators, but it's not supposed to matter in the fiction. But immediately they're like, no, we're gonna actually like bring that pressure onto the screen. So like that's one thing that's immediately striking. I think there's other stuff going on, but I'm interested to hear what stuck out to everybody else.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of the first times in Star Wars where you see how colonialism specifically impacts a character and their view of the Empire. Because, like, if you go all the way back to the original trilogy, you have Luke Skywalker, who, like, Tatooine is not colonized. Tatooine is just kind of like out there. And obviously, he suffers great personal tragedy at the expense of the Empire, but it's not his entire culture, his entire way of life, his entire being that is being systemically attacked. And same with Han and Leia and pretty much all of these main characters. And right off the bat with Cassian, you see how his entire culture is already like when he's like, I don't know, 10 or 11 or 12, his culture has already been little downs to that. And the thing that really struck me was somehow it took me until the end of that first episode to realize that it's just a village of children. Like, I don't know why it took me that long to figure it out, but the minute you figure that out, it's like, oh, all the adults have already
Died.
been like imprisoned, or something has happened to them that they are gone. So they're already on their last, like,
Mhm.
it's just devastating. And I know Star Wars has never done that to such a visual extent before, and it's really powerful, and it gives it, because I read so many of the Star Wars books as a kid, and they do delve into issues of colonialism a little bit more because you have a little bit more freedom in the literary side of things. I knew that because I had read it, but there is a difference between reading something, especially something that no longer counts as canonical, and seeing it in the way that you see the destruction of Cassian's homeworld, and you see it just starts with him looking for his sister, and like, yeah.
And I agree with the points that are already made. I think that Andor really attacks colonialism head on from the very beginning, from the get-go. And I think just to add on to what's been said, it's interesting how in Andor the colonialism is shown not in and of itself, but as a part of like capitalism and fascism and all these three things being part of the same project, right? You see that it's not just about extractive colonialism in Canary where they mine things, or it's not just the prison planet, but they all like lead together in like their environmental impacts and how the police state is used to protect property and to uphold capitalism, not just fascism, which is, again, like the way that all these three things interconnect, I think is very smart, very well done. I don't think I've seen it in a lot of Star Wars property, but that's because like they didn't really have a lot of runway. When you have like a movie, for example, you can't really drill into how those like institutions and those kind of problems are all the same thing and are interrelated. And so that's what I really was impressed by. It was like, oh yes, colonialism, but also like the way it's perpetuated is because of fascism and because and how capitalism like really kind of calcifies that. So I think that's just like super impressive, and I know we're gonna get into all of that in this panel. That's why I'm super excited.
For me, I really loved the framing that the showrunners went with. Very, very human framing. So what we see is from the point of view of those native peoples, not just the Canary children, but the Donnie on Aldani and even the Narkinians. Star Wars to me, because I'm definitely not like as huge of a Star Wars fan as the rest of this panel is, and still this captured my attention. The non-humanoid races in Star Wars always seem to be there for like comedic effect. But even humanoid races seem to be there as, you know, they're funny aliens, and here they're not. They're very humanized. They're contextualized for us.
God, so I rewatched the prequels like a year or so ago,
Yeah.
and something that, well, I had such an interesting reaction to them like years and years after having watched them for the first time. But one of the things that was really striking to me about Phantom Menace is how offhandedly cruel Obi-Wan and Anakin are to Jar Jar Binks. Like, this is a person, and they are not treating him like well, not a human, but a person. It's wild if you watch it in that framework and you're thinking, wait a minute, this person is sentient. Like, that is not a good way to treat another like living being.
Mhm.
Um,
Even in The Mandalorian, what's her face? The engineer's character, when she speaks to the Ewoks, like it's like a very funny sounding language for like the ridiculousness for ridiculousness sake, if that makes sense. And it's very othering to me.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Any
one of the
other
things that
comments?
struck me, just jumping off of what was already said, is how we don't really see a lot of non-human races in Andor, and I wish that there were more of that. Like we do see the Narcanians. The Narcanians are clearly non-human, but I think they could have easily done that with the Aldani, I think, or the Canary. Well, maybe not the Canary because like Andor is from there, but you know what I'm saying? Like mostly the entire cast is human, and I wonder because one of the themes of the show was like collective action. I wonder if that was a conscious choice in the creators to have like a mostly human characters. Just thinking about it.
Yeah, I just saw someone in the chat noting that like droids are treated very weirdly in Star Wars. Absolutely, 100% they are. And like the gentle care with which B is treated often in
Maybe.
this show
Mm,
like hurts my feelings in a very real way because it's like this is a good relationship. The kindness that he receives at times is just heartbreaking, but you know, it's still like this is a slave class of sentient beings. Cool, great.
B is very much a part of the family,
Yeah.
Marva's family, and that kind of segues very nicely into the next question, which is let's talk about the centrality of family and community in the show and how that helps a character grow and develop. I'm thinking specifically of Cassian and Mon Mothma, but of course there are other characters with families and a community around. So I'm going to punt this one out to Victor first.
I think one of the most striking, like familiar relationship to me is Mon Mothma's because from the outset we see her position not just as a senator and like as a covert part of the Rebel Alliance, but as a wife and as a mother, and the sacrifices that she's had to make in those relationships. Right, there are parts in the show where we are made to disdain her husband Perrin, where she herself says that my husband is not to be trusted, and that feels like such a corrosive thing to someone's soul, where you're like your central relationship has to be untrustworthy to you because you have this greater cause, right? And then, of course, toward the end of the season, we see how her role is as a mother is really pushed to the limit, where she has to make a deal to essentially have her daughter pawned off into basic as a child bride, basically. I mean, I think she is 13, and the potential husband is also a young man, but still, it's wild. Oh, kitty.
I I loved everything they did with Chandrila society because and like Mon Mothma has always been my favorite, and I wasn't sure how I was going to react to giving her a family, but I love that like Chandrila is considered like a core world, like a gem of the Republic and then the Empire, and like powerful and influential, and their culture is so fucked up. Like Mon Mothma gets married when she's like she said she gets married when she's like 15. So
Yeah,
she's consigning her daughter to the exact fate that she's stuck with. And you
that she.
see in you see in her face that she's like, this is the very last thing I wanted for my daughter, but I'm going to do it for the greater good, which is just heartbreaking after you see how much she's suffering in her family situation and how much she and her husband hate each other.
Right, and she feels so alone, and I think it's such an interesting contrast to the family that Andor has, and I'm going to leave that discussion to the rest of the panel because there's also a lot to say there. But
Yeah.
in terms of family, that's really one of the things. It's like the heartbreaking part of being, of working towards a cause and having to sacrifice your most central familial relationships for that cause.
Yeah, so like Star Wars has a mom problem. It loves to sideline mothers and or to kill them or both. And Marva does die, but she is also like literally a cornerstone of the emotional experience, not to
I'm sorry.
but like
If I have to go out, I'd rather do it like more.
oh my God, I think actually there's something I was thinking of when we were talking about the previous question. Like there's even a tension in the Marva Cassian relationship where the fact that like this white lady took this brown boy away from his people. She saved his life. But this is, a fact that I feel Andor is not actually, it doesn't lean on it, but it feels not unaware of the tensions there. Um, and it's an element of this relationship because, like, there are things that Andor says, if we are to take the things he says honestly, because often he's lying to people, just to like move through the world. But he went to juvie because he went to a war front, or he went to a war front and ended up in juvie. Like it's unclear. But he wasn't just hanging out at home. His relationship with Marva, however loving it is, has involved a degree of him being unable to live in these conditions, presumably because of just like the trauma that is foundational to his own like soul and life. But she has been there for him with this intense, unflinching love that is articulated not just in what she refuses to let him do, which is like live his life thinking she was disappointed in him, like the words she gives to Brasso to give to Cassian. And oh, it's just, she's such a marvelous character that I don't think Star Wars has made room for before, at least in my experience. And the thing I love about Mon Mothma is I don't know if she's a great mom, in part because she has chosen the rebellion over that. And the show is happy to let her like not be an ideal mother. It's great.
Yeah. She's a marvelous character. Sorry, I had to but the other thing with Cassian's family that I really appreciated is how much attention they also bring to his father and to Marva's husband, which I felt so guilty that I did this. The first time I watched it through, we got to episode 4 and I'd forgotten the name of Cassian's dad. So when he gives his fake name as Clem, I'm like, ha ha, Clem, that's such a funny name. And then later on, I realized that it's his dad, and I'm like, oh, I'm terrible. I'm a terrible person. Why would I make fun of that? It's his dad. But no, and then in the flashbacks, you see how much of the same sort of loving relationship he has with his father, and how his father's death served to really radicalize him in a lot of ways. And that's I mostly don't have anything else to add. I just wanted to bring his dad into the conversation also, and also add that I really appreciate that they don't villainize or they don't demonize Mon Mothma for not being the best mother in the world, which I appreciate, because it feels like anytime you have a character who's a mother, she has to be perfect, otherwise she's seen as some sort of a failure, which I just have no patience for. And yeah,
So what I actually, and this is speaking to like the visuals of the show, when Cassian's in Ferrex, you see community. There are people everywhere. People know him, even though he's a fugitive. Like people know he's around. The second he touches ground on Ferrex, everybody already knows. Like the network is in play. And Mon Mothma is so often framed in the middle of the screen, like framed alone, like a still painting. It's so heartbreaking to watch her, as contrasted with the busyness and like just the daily life rhythm of the people of Ferrex. This is totally an aside, but like the time grappler is like one of my favorite parts of Ferrex. The way that they have built Ferrex to show community, to show a long-standing city that has deep roots on this planet. It was just like mind-blowing to me. I have never been so grounded in a place in Star Wars like in my life.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%. Like that wall of gloves, and just like that moment they start all like people just start making a beeline for all of these little like chimes and things that they can
Yeah,
beat
their
on.
alarm system
Just
really
like,
reminds
oh,
me of like, you know, poor communities or communities of color when cops are coming and how
mhm.
they have systems of like, hey, the popo's around. Like
Yeah.
that was the vibe, and that was like the close-knit community that Ferrix reminded me of, like how these people really protect their own. They know what's going on. They know that, not everyone is perfect. They all have flaws, and they're all just trying to do their best, trying to survive, and we're gonna
Mhm.
protect each other because we're all we have.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Except for Tim, who's a
Stunning.
snitch.
Ah, well,
Don't be a snitch,
wow.
Tim. Don't be a narc.
So I think it was
Snitches get
Rebecca
Tim,
who
stitches.
actually,
Tim.
screw you, Tim. Rebecca actually, I think it was Rebecca who made this remark during our rewatch that, this whole thing gets started because of a man's jealousy, which was like, oh my God, you are so right. A man did this. Yeah.
Mhm.
Tim.
Yeah,
And it's
Tim's
just
fucked up.
Yep.
yes. And like he was not secure in his relationship. And speaking of, I think this is the first time we've had like directly implied sex in a Star Wars.
Oh my
Like,
Mhm.
God. Okay,
Yeah.
first, I started, my brain like turned on within the first few minutes of watching Andor because when he's walking down that street with the people in the bubbles, I was like, oh, this is like those Scandi red light districts. Like, but they won't do that because it's Star Wars. And it's like, oh my God, wait, no, they're doing it. What have they done? They've gotten away with something good. Yeah, no, it's amazing. Andor has been willing to go places and it has somehow managed to do it. I don't know. I
Yeah.
love them.
I I I was getting into a conversation with a friend about the show the other day because I was saying how watching Mandalorian, I've always been kind of like middling average on the Mandalorian, but watching this season it feels especially hollow in the wake of Andor. And my friend was like, "Well, I like having something that's like not as serious and more fun and funny." And I'm like, "That's totally legit. Like you can have a popcorn show, but I want more. If we're gonna have like half a dozen Star Wars shows having airtime at the same time, I want more shows that take risks. And Andor very clearly took so many risks and paid off in every single respect. Like we have a question at the very end talking about things we didn't like, and like there are things that I didn't like, but
we'll get to that
that
at the end
list
for sure.
that
Yeah.
list is so small compared to the things that they did right and the things that they did so well from a creation standpoint, from a craft standpoint. And
And I feel like that list is also more sophisticated because
yes,
I'm like having conversations with like some choices where I'm like, well, I'm not sure what they're going to do with this versus I will confess, I'm just not that interested in The Mandalorian. I've tried it multiple times. I've jumped in at different points and gone like, okay, I'm kind of bored now. But that's just because I'm the kind of media enjoyer who wants what Andor's doing. Um,
Mhm.
like I need spectacle with meat because this show has some breathtaking spectacle, but
Mhm.
ooh, I need something to chew on, and this is absolutely delivered.
I love that
Yeah.
we're talking about character now, so I'm just going to skip straight to that question. The gray morality of the characters. I think this is for me also the first time that Star Wars has said, hey, this guy's a rogue. He's not good. And then shows him not being good, like murdering people in cold blood. like that in the first episode when he accidentally kills that one guy, and then he's looking at the other guy, and we're like, oh my god, don't do it, don't. Oh, you did it, and then scene.
As Andor's defense lawyer, I'm gonna say it's self-defense all the way.
No, but it is though. It totally is, because that mirrors so many
Uh-huh.
real life situations where a person of color is being harassed by the cops, and
Mhm.
they do not have the power to fight back the way that Cassian decided to.
Yeah, the instant fear in my body when they started coming up behind him, like, oh,
Mhm.
how bad does this go? Because you just feel in your flesh like this doesn't end well one way or another. And so in a way it's a relief that he gets out, but also it's a very bad outcome because he has essentially to flee from now. And it's
Yes, let's open
yeah.
up the our horizon to people like Cyril and Dedra, and our other very, very motivated characters in this show.
I read an interview with the actress who plays Dedra, and it was so fascinating because she had never seen any Star Wars, which I just find so refreshing and so cool that she came into it
My
with,
person.
and like, and she's very clear. She's like, she says, like, you see her trying to be a girl boss and like trying to be this like powerful person, but she's still a fascist. Like, she is unapologetically a fascist. And I really appreciate that the show gives her a complexity and gives that really creepy dynamic between her and Cyril, which I find so oof. But then
Skin
has,
crawling.
yeah, and but gives no excuses for her. And like the finale where she like looks like she's about to get beat up by all of the people on Ferrix, I was just like yelling at the TV. It was just like, get her!
Oh, I'm so afraid. But like, I love that the show makes us feel for every single character, even Dedra with her sneer, that amazing sneer that she has, being like the worst fascist, and yet she's still in a moment, she's still a second class citizen in some ways because she's a woman, and she's the only woman in the room, even though Partagaz is pulling for her.
And the thing is, besides the sexism like that she has to contend with, which makes us like kind of feel for her, and then you realize, wait, she's a fascist. She's also got good instincts, right? Like she knows like, oh, right, this is what's going on. And like as a viewer who's trying to make sense of the world and what's going on and the many moving pieces, then you're allowed to like empathize with her, like, oh, she's figured it out. Like the rebellion is like, this is too random to be random. Like she's cracked the puzzle that we as viewers were also trying to crack. So like we empathize with her, and then you're like, oh shit, right. I forgot she's the bad guy. Same with Cyril. I think the writing does a really good job of showing him as an incompetent loser who's just trying to prove himself, and like who has an overbearing mother who probably like owes a lot of his issues to that. And you're like, oh, this poor guy, he really just wants to like maybe break out of the shadow of his mother or like trying to assert himself, but then he chooses the most horrible ways to do that, by being a cop, by being basically an incel who stalks Dedra Miro and like has this really creepy relationship or obsession. So like the way I just have so many opinions about these two characters where like I hate them, but also like wow, the writing made me really think about like, but they made points kind of like, but yeah.
I
I love the slimy, mundane iniquity of Cyril Card. He feels so real, so
Yeah.
believable. It's like, I don't know if I've seen the incel textbook here on screen, let alone in a Star Wars. This is
Yeah.
incredible. Everything from that terrible, toxic relationship with his mother
yeah.
to the action figures in his bedroom to that
Yes, action figures
aspiration
in
to
Dedra?
mean something in the world. It's Incel 101, and it's
Mhm.
just astounding.
Yeah, when I was rewatching it with, I had seen it, my partner was watching it for the first time with me, and we get to first time we really see him with his mother, and his mother is going off, and my partner's like, I hate this guy, but I feel really bad for him right now. And it was just like, yeah, like and like, as somebody who also has an extraordinarily overbearing mother, I was like, the last thing I want is to relate to this guy. But I kind of relate to him. And that's just such a skin crawling feeling, but it's so brilliant.
It's so good.
It is so good. And Partagaz too, even though like he commands the screen every single time he's on there, and the dehumanizing way he talks about the sectors of the empire and what's going on in those sectors. Like, what do you call it? Like, we are public health. We are like the cure for the disease. I'm like, these are people. These are not like a random infection or something like that. So like to have that dehumanizing language in a place of power was something that really struck home for me.
And then,
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and then on the flip side, I find it interesting. I find it interesting that with the richness of everything, we have not once mentioned Luthen.
Okay,
that was the next thing.
I needed to get to Luthen.
But then, so you contrast the dehumanization that it goes on in the Empire with Luthen's just absolutely ruthless. I'm going to sacrifice this entire cell of the rebellion because it is for the greater good. And like this one spy who has some second thoughts, like fuck him, screw that. Like, no, absolutely not.
Luthen's monologue.
Oh
yeah.
God.
Oh yeah, that last monologue is just the absolute brutality of what's necessary to create this foundation of rebellion is just fascinating.
So like we all agree he's like ex-Jedi, right? Like that's what's going on with the little sticky hat.
No.
Okay,
Those close
I really
shots
feel like
of
that's
his
where
his
they must be
pain.
going. But whatever. Like even if he isn't, the moment he comes to you and you're like, okay, this is a very good performance. It's magnetic. And then he does that moment where he transforms into like his Coruscant persona, and you're like, oh, dude,
Where he's
what's going
rehearsing,
on with this
when he was
guy?
rehearsing his
Yes.
like,
Oh,
whoa.
it's gorgeous. But like, I think the moment when I started really like, I already loved him. He was already like top tier favorite characters. But the moment when he's like, oh, by the way, I'm an accelerationist, I was like, dude.
Yeah.
That's like, I have a lot of complicated feelings about that, mostly because, as someone with disabilities and illness, whenever accelerationism comes up or people are like, oh, we really need to make a point. I'm like, I just need to make sure that everybody has their medication tomorrow. That's what I'm here for. And accelerationism just like sets fire to that kind of thing instantly. So he was immediately fascinating to me on a whole new level, which was incredible because I was already like tracking him whenever he moved across the screen. But oh, he's amazing. I'm so afraid of him and for him.
Acknowledgement that he is not so different from the people that he's fighting against, except what makes him different is that he understands, he has empathy, and he also has a lot of grief and guilt for what he's doing. That's just like that monologue. Yeah, we'll get back to it. I do also want to address the prison arc and all of that. And I wanted to ask about, like, you guys, we're all writers, right? What techniques have you seen that you would for characterization or like world building that you yourself would like to bring into your own writing, plus the completely unrelated question of, let's talk about that prison scene.
Wow, that's a lot of questions in one.
There's a lot of questions.
But in terms of like techniques, for example, one thing that I really like, and this is not the prison arc, it's the Aldani arc, where you have a crew, you're doing a heist, right? And we've all seen, maybe even written heists. You have some conventions, you have your tropes, you have your stock characters and the things that they do. One of the things that happens in the show is Arvel basically at the end saying like, let's just go off with the money and run and leave these people behind. Right. And, I was waiting for that because like, oh, if this is a heist, there will be a double cross, there will be a betrayal at some point. When is it going to happen? And it happens at that point. And then Andor's like, damn, you're horrible, I'm gonna kill you, and he does. I like that because it's a trope of a heist where there is a betrayal, right? But at the same time, the betrayal comes in the context of a conversation that these characters have been having for 3 episodes about motivation and about collective action and about what brings people into a rebellion and what are the pitfalls of putting together a coalition of people to fight the empire. And the double cross isn't purely selfish, it's illustrative of how when you are trying to do something in terms of like building or fomenting a rebellion, you will have betrayals that are just so mundane. And because the betrayal works on that level of like how rebellions fail, and also in a heist there will always be a betrayal, it's just heightening the use of that trope. So I
Yeah.
think that's one of the craft things that I was like, oh, this is smart. It's not just like, okay, there has to be betrayal, it happens. No, the betrayal says something about the entire theme of the show.
But
Yeah.
also
And
like as a oh sorry.
I'm sorry. Oh, I thought it was interesting because what you were saying about how Cassian is like, oh, like this is really bad. Like I have to be. I viewed that scene as him just him shooting the guy as just like a panic response, as just like, if you keep talking, I'm going to do this deal. Like if you keep talking, I'm going to do the bad thing and be complicit in your betrayal. And you just have to stop talking. You have to stop talking.
Mm,
And
I
I
also
think
saw it as like an existential threat to self.
yes, and like
Cassian's a
I
survivalist, right?
yeah,
right.
and I think that in terms of what you're saying, and like going building on tropes of heist, that absolute just viscerality of every single scene. Like in like other movies, you see people freaking out when they're on a heist because always something is going to go wrong. But this just felt very in like you're in the body when they are making when they're freaking out. They're making these
Yeah.
choices that they're not thinking. They're just acting. And it's I find it so I want to bring that sort of viscerality into my writing.
Think, yeah, I've been like stunned perpetually every episode. Like there was a point when like it was airing every week. I would become so tense in my seat that one of the cats in our home is like chronically like he has some brain damage from when he was a kitten, so he's a little bit stupid. But when he saw me at night in my chair like all tensed, I like just raised my eyes and I saw him in the doorway slowly inflating because whatever my body language was to him as a cat was very dangerous. Like something bad is happening. Mother is afraid. And it was just like, wow, this show is incredible. You know, I paused it, I put it down, I went over to him like, I'm fine, I'm experiencing media. But I thought for a really long time about what is it they are doing that is creating this impact. And I think part of it is that they are so unaffected about their ability to be in Star Wars. There's no like tongue in cheek, like, haha, laser guns. It's like, no, we are here. This is the world. We are being honest about the impact that everything has on these living, breathing beings. It's
Yeah.
just, oh, it's so grounded. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I think that this more than any Star Wars, and we sort of talked about this already with Ferrex, I feel like I could live there and picture it as a community, as a place. And something that has always bothered me about Star Wars is how surface level it feels a lot of the time, and how a lot of my like part of the reason that I got so into the books when I was a kid was because I wanted what was missing from the movies. And you get that here, and you get that sense of society and community. And as we were talking about all the way back in the just the sense of the insidiousness and connections of every single part of empire and capitalism, which I know we wanted to talk about the prison scene. I think is a good segue into that, because that that post credit scene um which you see because you know when they're in prison, they're being forced to build war machinery. Like you know that, and it's just I don't know. I don't have words for it after that, but it's
So, this does, thank you, Suzanne, for the lead into the question of, Cassian says we were fighting ourselves in episode 4, when he's talking to Skeen. And this ties so deeply into what this entire series is about. So, like, tell me how you felt, how you reacted, whether you reacted at all on first watch and you only realized on second watch, like, what that really means to Andor.
Yeah, I don't know. I
Um,
didn't know the reference. So he was talking about a battle, and I wasn't familiar with that battle. I took it as because of capitalism and colonialism, like class solidarity just breaks down among the oppressed, and that's how I read it. And then on second viewing, I'm like, oh, this is a recurring theme, and it happens in every act of the show, where people are pitted, the oppressed are pitted against each other, and we see that in the prison scene, right? Like they have quotas, they have to compete with other tables, they have to compete with other levels, or else they don't get flavor in their food, or else they will get fried, right? And that's how the systems in power are remain in place because there is just no opportunity for them to band together, which is the whole theme of the show again. So yeah, when I heard that line the first time, like I didn't get the context, and then on second view, I'm like, oh, right, and that is the solution. It's like we have to stop like fighting each other and thinking we have different interests.
mhm. Yeah, I think that's something that's really impressive to me about the way that this show uses Saw Gerrera, which is gonna like I think stand out more for folks who are more deeply embedded in Star Wars as like a whole franchise with all of its twisting little stories. But Saw Gerrera is usually the guy who's being used to be like, oh, he's on the edge. We don't know if we can actually get along with Saw. Like there's some episode in some series where he and Mon Mothma actually kind of have it out. And, in the context of the show, that's going to be newly fun, but it's can be a little frustrating watching the way that the narrative will treat Saw when it's like, oh, violence isn't the answer, and Andor is saying, well, sometimes violence is the answer.
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
Non-action is not
does
something we can afford to do
like
in the
does
face of
makes
oppression.
is Saw sometimes extremely cruel in ways that are perhaps unnecessary? Yeah, he does do some really dubious stuff in Rogue One, but it treats him like someone with conviction, and it respects who he is in this greater fabric, and this show's willingness to do that is really striking to me.
Yeah, I think that well, I have two thoughts. One, in I think the show that I really remember the contrast between Saw and Mon Mothma is in Rebels, and I agree. I really think that they do Saw a huge disservice in that one, and I think they also kind of do Mon Mothma a disservice because she's talking, and I'm like, oh, shut up, Nancy Pelosi, like just stop. And then you see her in Andor, and she's basically has the same politics, and I'm still frustrated with her in a lot of ways, but there's so much more meat to it, and I have so much more empathy and understanding for why she's taking her positions, even if I don't agree with them. Um, and even and with Saw here, I think that this show takes a franchise that deals so often in tropes and disassembles those tropes and presents us with a story that just has more humanity to it in a lot of ways. Um, and I think that, and even with the thing about how we realized we were fighting ourselves, that made me think of just how the entire prequel series and the entire Clone Wars were engineered by Sheev Palpatine. I'm sorry, I just love that his name is Sheev. I'm going to keep using it all the time. It was engineered by him so that he could take over the galaxy, and it's loss of life that is unfathomable that is just like, oh, ha, 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 the Jedi and the Sith are at it again. And then you see Cassian saying, as a like child soldier, saying, oh, we were fighting ourselves this whole time. It's like, oh, that's the cost. That is what we see is wrong. Or not, obviously it's wrong, but that's the toll that is being taken.
It's really disillusioning, right? Like he really
Yeah.
lost a lot of his spirit when he realized that.
Yeah.
Okay, we have 5 minutes left. I still have a lightning round of questions, and there is a question that if I don't ask it, I think Emma may not forgive me. So let me ask it real fast, and then we'll like take 3 minutes. Sorry, no audience questions. We're gonna be in Swooperton after this to discuss more stuff. We're all writers, right? And Emma and Suzanne specifically have written Star Wars IP. After seeing what Tony Gilroy has done, how do you think that's going to influence you for future IP projects? What does that allow you to do in the grand scheme of Disney?
Okay. I was like, what would I? Okay. I thought I spent a lot of Ronin sort of like having some emotional grappling with the wars part of Star Wars because it's very deeply embedded in Japanese culture and specifically a part of Japanese cinema that's very much in relationship with World War II and its aftermath, and Japanese artists grappling with both the brutalities that they have uh, perpetrated and suffered, you know? Because Japan as an empire in World War II commits atrocities and then suffers atrocity. And that was the thing I was sort of like trying to use Star Wars as an opportunity to like talk to. But I think that ended up with me being kind of cynical about Star Wars on a whole. And I don't think Andor is cynical about Star Wars. So that is really inspiring and interesting to me. And so I think that's something I'm keeping with me. But move on.
Yeah, I think that same with me. I think that it really made me because I was watching Andor. I've just finished watching Andor as I started drafting my story for the Return of the Jedi anthology, and I was just thinking to myself, how can I capture the feeling of Andor in my story? And IP is, I think, both limiting and freeing because there are things that you can't do. Like I gave some suggestions about my story to Lucasfilm, and they came back and they're like, "Sorry, you can't do that." And at first, I was like really disappointed and really bummed. And then I was like, "Oh, well, no, I can do this other thing, and this other thing actually works better." So I think it's IP in general is just learning about how to work with the how to work within your box, and knowing that there is a box, but you can do stuff in it. And I think Andor really showed how much stuff you can do. And I don't know if I'll be asked to write a Star Wars again. I hope so, obviously, but if I am, like, that's what I'm gonna take with me. So
Okay, lightning round. And I want to say the first question of this is actually not a lightning round question, but I would love to discuss it more because it shouldn't be backgrounded at all. Let's go Victor, Suzanne, Emma in this order. Okay, what didn't you like? One thing you didn't like about Andor? Did we lose Victor?
uh-oh.
Oh no!
Oh no! Okay, Suzanne.
Stop killing black men in Star Wars, for God's sake.
Yeah, that's the big one. But also, like, I feel very leery
Welcome
about.
back. Next hour, minute and a half.
Oh yeah, Victor, you go.
I really can't point into one specific instance where like Andor turns or realizes that, hey, you know what? Like I gotta like not care about myself too much. I think it comes too late in the season. I would have wanted it earlier, just structurally, but that is like a super minor thing that I didn't like. Like I really had to search my soul into like something that I didn't like, and all I can think about was like structure and pacing of that kind of like like not radicalization necessarily. I don't think he's there yet, but where that starts, I'm like I can't even like pinpoint where it is. And I think if I did, it would be like episode 11 and 12, and I think that's too late. But that's so minor.
Um, I think the thing that I'm still on the fence about, and I'm waiting to see how it pans out. It feels realistic that between Vel and Cinta would be the one who is more reconciled with the idea of sometimes you have to do violence. But it does feel a little weird that they're making the brown lady do all the violence and the white lady is not. I'm like, all right, we'll see how this goes.
Okay.
The rich white lady.
Yeah.
Who should get an acting award for the show? One person.
Oh my God.
On a
Lucian
shot.
for me.
No, not
Let's
one,
not-
more.
Yeah, more. My first instinct was Fiona Shaw just for that last speech, but like you can't also exclude Stellan Skarsgård from that, or Diego. This question is not fair.
Oh my God.
Okay.
But
And lastly, before
Andy Serkis, I guess. I don't know.
we
Oh my
leave.
God.
Sorry,
Oh no,
what?
Victor. Okay. Last question before we leave and we extroduce ourselves. Best visual.
The eye?
The eye.
Okay, so I've been Mia Tsai, author of Bitter Medicine. You can find me at It's a Mia on Twitter. Emma, go.
I'm Emma Mieko Candon. You can find me at Emma Candon on Twitter or at mcandon on a bunch of other social media sites, mostly Tumblr.
Suzanne, go.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Walker. You can find me at Suzasaur, Suzusaur on Twitter, or Suzisaur, Suzisaur on Instagram.
And Victor.
Victor Manibo at Victor Manibo everywhere on all the platforms. And this was so much fun. Please join us in the breakout room after, because like I want to keep talking about this.
Thank you, everybody. We'll be in Swooperton.
Thanks, everyone.